right, let's get into it. We're going to talk more Ruslan and Marcus Pittman today. Hopefully I'll let them talk a lot more so we can get through a lot more of it. I'm enjoying it, and I think you guys are too, so just let me know in the comments if you're sick of this guy or whatever. That's totally valid because we've been doing a lot of content about him. Before we begin, there's just two things I wanted to mention. The first one was I'm listening to I've been watching some videos from Rebel Capitalist. He's an interesting character, and he started off his video the other day with this news report about how government officials are trying to let the banks trying to instruct the banks to figure out how to get credit cards available for people that don't qualify for them. So people that don't have a credit history or people that have a bad credit history or whatever, excuse me, they're trying to pressure banks into providing those for people. And the way that the article is written, it's almost like having a credit card is part of the American dream, is what he was saying. And it's just so upside down, guys. Like think about that. Like, it's almost like a right. It's a privilege. It's a right of humanity almost to give poor people access to debt at ridiculous rates. How upside down is this when you think about it? Like God's law specifically talks about banning usury, right? Banning usury. That's not talking about business loans or capital investments and things like that. It's talking about this exact thing, like people who are too poor to buy stuff today, giving them loans at like 30% interest, and so they can buy stuff now, but somehow they don't have the money to buy it now, but they're going to have even more money to buy it later. It's just such a scam, and I think, I was trying to think through this past weekend. Payday loans are clearly usury. They should be banned. But credit cards, I'm starting to think, are usury as well. Now, obviously, not all credit cards are done that way or targeted or marketed that way. That's true. But for every person that's like me that has a credit card that I pay off every month and, gets the benefits or rewards or whatever it is, there's a lot of people that are not like me and carry a balance, and they can't afford it, and they use the credit card to buy things they can't afford. It's not a privilege, guys. Like, it's not a human right to get a credit card. That is so twisted. Our government is so twisted. Don't fall for the scam. Having a student loan is not a privilege or a right that every person should have. It's not going to benefit people. That's definitely true. Anyway, so there's that. The other thing is, I had somebody today push back on my content about Paul Carter, and his response was just so sad to me. And I mean sad like it made me actually sad to read it. And he was defending Paul Carter, saying that he was a good guy, a good brother in the Lord. And his evidence for this, guys, it's just, guys, Christians don't need to get the crumbs. We belong to the King of the universe, guys. Like, this is so sad. This is what is evidence for this guy being a great faithful warrior for the Lord. Paul Carter is having 10 services a year to provide for the needs of those who want to meet. He's having 10 services a year. So he's a solid warrior, epic lion for the cross, because he's having a fifth of the amount of Lord's Day services that he should be having. And he's still lying for the crown. He's still pretending like Christians aren't being abused, even as more and more are being abused by the Canadian crown every single day. Guys, we need to raise our standards here. It's not too much to ask to have your pastor open church. It's his whole reason for existing for 52 days in a year. It's not too much to ask. We don't need to get the crumbs. We are sitting at the table of the King. We should be feasting on Sunday. But this guy's like, well, he's a solid brother because he has 10 services a year. It's just that made me, I didn't cry, but on the inside, it made me just like, man, like how far have we fallen? How far have we fallen? The Lord has done it though, guys. We understand that. So let's jump into Ruslan. And I'm going to see if I can keep my promise to not talk this much. Let's do it.
Correction of this.
We've got a commercial.
This entrepreneur brand logo was done by a top freelancer on Fiverr. Is
There's some
simply
decent freelancers on Fiverr, but just keep in mind the old adage: you get what you pay for. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
I reject that completely.
Okay, why do you reject it?
Well, because I went to school that was like 90% black, and I was bullied all the time. So I could say the same thing, that those systems of oppression.
As did I.
Right, but I just go, no, it has nothing to do with whiteness. It has to do with they're totally depraved sinners.
Sure. And can depravity impact someone's self-view as being superior to other people?
Can depravity
and our wicked hearts skew our self-perception and make us view ourselves on a conscious or subconscious level as better than?
Well,
is
that's
that possible?
Just pride then. That's not a system of
Okay, so what happens when you take that pride and then the people with that pride build out the system, build out the country, build out specific laws, build out laws that hurt people?
I don't believe in this stuff as he's explaining all the things that social justice advocates, critical race theorists, all this stuff believe. It's just so sad, dude. It's so sad.
That is what the idea of systemic racism. I don't think that's incompatible with depravity. I don't think that's incompatible with Scripture.
It's not incompatible with depravity in the sense, but it's incompatible in the sense where these racial, it's making it a racial thing and not just a pure sin thing. I think black and white people together can come and build institutions that subvert other people. Right? I mean, you see this.
Yeah,
with,
yeah, sure. But we just call it whiteness because it's that white skin that's responsible. Like it's just so sad. Like, let's stop playing games. It is about the white skin. The Barack Obama created all kinds of unjust systems. He was an evil man. He created evil systems. He supports evil systems and all of that kind of thing. He's wicked. But that's not whiteness, obviously, Ruslan. That's obviously not whiteness. Let's stop playing games here, buddy.
The GOP.
By the way, I heard that Ruslan, some people were trying to convince Ruslan to have a conversation with me, and he's not receptive to it, obviously. I think I know why he's not receptive to it. But to be honest, guys, like, I have no interest in speaking with Ruslan. Like, you guys probably have to convince me to do it as well. Because I think I said this. I made a video the other day. Not the other day, but it was earlier this year, so it was recent enough, where I said, I'm not interested in these conversations anymore. I've asked for 3 years to have these conversations. I know where that goes. It goes nowhere. And so, I've got self-respect. I'm not going to grovel to speak to the great Ruslan. I don't care. I don't care at all to speak to him. I mean, like, he strikes me as someone who's using tactics instead of having an open dialogue. I'm just not. My time is too valuable for that. YouTube's not all I do, by the way. I mean, I think we all know this. I make very little of my income on YouTube. I've got other fish to fry. So the only way I would do it is if it was on my channel and I was taking super chats. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. I would do it for a certain amount of money, but just to have a chat with Ruslan, just not interested. I still talk to. You can ask people in the comment section how often I've done this. I do this all the time. I speak to regular Joes, and I'm willing to do that. Regular Joes that are social justice warriors, or regular Joes that are in struggles with their churches on social justice. I set aside a lot of time for that kind of thing, private conversations and stuff like that. But with Ruslan, I'm really not interested. So if you want to talk to Ruslan, you're going to have to convince him and me, because that's just how it is these days. Next time the Washington Post calls me for a quote, I'm going to say, no thanks, go pound sand.
As black and white people in there together, and they're putting up Jenner. Right? That doesn't have anything to. Yeah,
it's hilarious. Let me give you an example.
By the way, I just want to say you have a newborn kid, and you didn't have a lot of time for me. But I
got about another 20-30 minutes. But let me give you an example this way. Okay, so
these guys,
how much do you know about?
These guys are like on my time. He's like, I got another 20-30 minutes, but this goes on for like another hour. That's like how I roll. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to talk a lot in this video, but probably by now I've talked for more than half the time.
Armenian people.
Are you talking about Armenian or Armenian?
Ethnically, not the theology.
Okay.
Yeah. Armenian.
I don't know that much about Armenians.
Okay. Armenian people, I'm Armenian. My mother's adopted, but she was also Armenian. I'm fairly lighter for an Armenian, but more or less, they're very much so. Armenians are the best. We're the best, right? There is
That's
a
the truth. That's the
there
truth.
is
I've known quite a few Armenians.
We're gonna wave the banner and say we're the best, and the reasons for that is because they trace the Armenian Orthodox Church back to the Apostle Bartholomew. That's what they view. So, as you know, the two earliest churches or nations that take a nationalistic position of Christianity is Armenia and Ethiopia. There's always debate on who was first. And there's a lot of ethnic pride with those nations and them being Christian nations and their rich history going back.
Can you imagine? I've spent some time in Ethiopia, probably at this point, 4 to 6 weeks in Ethiopia. It's a great country, and the people are so friendly. But he's right. The Ethiopians think they're the best. There's no question about that. Could you imagine going to Ethiopia and telling them to remove their systems of whiteness that oppress me because I'm Puerto Rican and I'm a minority group in Ethiopia? They'd laugh at you so hard, man. They'd laugh at you so hard.
Thousands of years. So Armenians view themselves as we're the best, right? As a lot of ethnicities do, as Irish people do, as whatever, right? Ethiopian people do. A lot of folks have this nationalistic sense of yeah, I love my culture. I love these things. Now, when I was a kid, I grew up going to an Armenian Orthodox church. It was fun. It was cool. It was all in Armenia. I had no idea any of the language. And one day, as someone that grew up predominantly around Black people, I decided to bring my Black friend to an Armenian church. And it wasn't that every Armenian there viewed him as inferior. It wasn't that they all viewed him as less than. Maybe some did. It was that the entire church, from the language the service was in, which, by the way, I didn't understand the language, to who it was for, why it was designed, what it existed for, was for Armenians. And in that environment, he didn't really feel welcomed. It wasn't really made for him to thrive and flourish. So when someone has I view us as the best, and then that's compounded with controlling the entire environment, or at least for
this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So Armenians think they're the best, and they created this Armenian church where it was in the Armenian language and it was an Armenian, culturally and stuff like that. Well, I guess Ruslan, that Armenians aren't alone in that, because I went to this Puerto Rican church once when I was a kid, and it was in Spanish, and they were doing Puerto Rican styled music and all that kind of stuff. They must think they're the best too, right? And then I guess German churches. There was a German church down the street from where I went to church. Actually, no, this was actually the same building that I went to church in New York. It was a German church, and it was a Lutheran church, and the service was in German, and everything was German. And so I guess Germans think they're the best too, right? Oh, okay. And then, and there's actually Ethiopian churches too. In fact, there's an Ethiopian Orthodox church and all of that. And it's in Amharic, the language, and stuff like that. I guess they must think they're the best too, right? And so I guess any ethnic church is just a system of oppression because they don't cater to every single person that comes into their door, right? That's what we're talking about by systemic oppression. The fact that not everyone's the same. I bet you, I've never seen one. I bet you, Ruslan, that there's Japanese churches as well in the Japanese language. Can you believe that churches exist these days that don't provide individualized interpreters for every person who comes with a different language? Can you even fathom such a thing? I can't believe that's oppression.
Years, maybe today it's not controlled 100%, but for hundreds of years, this entire environment is controlled. It's not so much about you are bad, I'm better, you are inferior, I'm superior. It's a subtlety of we are the best, and this is how we are the best, and this is why we are the best. And if you aren't us, then we're not going to tell you you're a piece of crap and we view you as less than, but we're just not going to create a system where you have equal access and connection and you're welcome.
So you see, if I walk into a Korean church, because I've seen Korean churches. I've never seen a Japanese church, now that I think about it. That's interesting. But I've definitely seen Korean churches, and you could always tell Korean churches, and they do that thing where they bus people in. I love that. So there's Korean churches. if I walk into a Korean church and they don't immediately start catering to my tastes, the fact that I speak English, the fact that I like alternative rock, the fact that I like coffee instead of I'm sure they drink tea of some kind in Korea. Maybe they drink coffee. I don't know. But if they don't start catering to me and making me feel welcome, like that's systemic oppression, and we really need to start turning the church upside down for that. This is the best he's got. This is his big example. Well, maybe they don't hate me, but Koreans don't overtly hate me when I go into their church, but they just don't cater to me. That's the big problem here.
I would argue that those systems in place now that's causing, whether it's black communities or minority communities in general, problems is a result of the government trying to fix it. Right? Like
sometimes,
desegregation,
sometimes.
Black Wall Street, Reconstruction, all those things really caused a lot more problems than they solved.
I don't want to get into desegregation, Black Wall Street. I'm happy that we don't have segregated schools.
What I'm saying, well, I mean, I wish we didn't have any at all, but we already talked about that. But the point I'm getting at is like a lot of these problems, like affirmative action.
I'll show you desegregated schools. Cancel the schools.
Like that's terrible. The idea that there has to be a certain amount of black people in every school that get elected, or minority colors that get elected, not based on their academic ability, but just based on the color of their skin. That's a terrible system, but that was implemented to fix it. And
when you're describing it like that, it is a terrible system. When you factor in that the number one recipient of affirmative action is white women, that's not exactly how it plays out. And you can look that up.
Feminists are awful too. So.
For sure. So
they cause problems too.
So to my understanding, whether or not how it played out, the idea and how a lot of times it's supposed to play out is if you have a white student and a black student and they're at the same percentile or equal that the black student goes through. It's not a white student scores 100 on the test, black student scores 75 on the test. We're just going to push him up and put him in Yale because Yale wants to meet his black quota. That's not how affirmative action works.
That's not fair to the white person that got the same score.
Well, if they value a diverse experience, and these two people scored the same, and we're saying, hey, because of these things with systemic racism, oppression, slavery, what have you, we want to create a diverse environment, we're going to take the equal in that situation and push through the person of color, the woman, the black person.
At the expense of someone else.
At the expense of someone else.
So let me get this straight. Your genius plan for reversing judging someone based on skin color is to judge people based on skin color. That's your genius plan. Now, you can't blame a pagan, right? Like a pagan is their mind is so broken that they look to the sky and they don't see God. They don't see the glory of God. The heavens don't, they read the heavens and it does not declare the glory of God. Their minds are broken, right? So a pagan, you could excuse them for being this idiotic. My brilliant plan for reversing discrimination based on skin color is to discriminate based on skin color. So that's pretty stupid. I mean, like you can't get dumber than that. That's like me saying I've got a great idea. I'm gonna stop cheating on my wife with this girl over here by cheating on my wife with this girl over here. Like that's stupid. You would obviously know that that's ridiculous. You would, if I was serious, obviously, and it wasn't just a scam, you'd probably tell me to go seek some therapy or something like that. And so you could excuse the pagan, right? They don't understand anything. You know what I mean? They don't even understand that God is there and all of that kind of thing. But Ruslan's not a pagan, at least as far as he professes. So he thinks that, like, he made a point here. He's like, you see, and he admits that it doesn't work out this way. But the original idea, he says, is not to give them bonus points, minorities, bonus points to get ahead of whites, but to give them, if it's equal, to judge based on skin color, right? If a white got an 80% on a test and a black got an 80% on a test, there's obviously no other factors except for how they do on a test, apparently. But then you promote the black person because they've got black skin. That's his solution to judging people according to skin color, right? Right. So Ruslan has no excuse here. And the reality is that it's not the way he said it is. It actually does work the opposite way where you get bonus points. I've told many stories about myself being the beneficiary of affirmative action policies. I consider myself a pretty smart guy, and I've gotten, I always did well in school, and I got good SAT scores and all that kind of stuff. But I know that I was the recipient of benefits regarding affirmative action and stuff like that. There's no question about it, and it's not a good feeling, and all that kind of thing. But yeah, so it's just. I just don't understand how he thinks he made a point. Like, it's not better that you're basically saying judge based on skin color, all things being equal. That's just as bad, right? So I don't understand why he thinks he's made a point here. He has no excuse for it. The Bible's very clear. You shall not show partiality. So there's no excuse for this. Again, a pagan, fine. You get it. He doesn't understand anything. Ruslan is professing Christ. He should know better, but he doesn't. And it's a really sad thing. Marcus is over here just loving this because it's preposterous what he just said.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm
saying that's how it's intended to work. You presented it like these black students are just jumping, grade levels.
No. I didn't mean it that way.
We both know that's not how it works, but that's how it's a lot of times presented.
What I meant to say is there,
Ruslan, we both don't know that that's not how it works. It does work that way, and I think you know it as well. Stop trying to scam people, bro.
Liberals are just pushing through these dumb black kids who don't know how to get. That's not how that works.
That's not what I'm saying. So here's the thing. Like, I think there are.
You see how Ruslan tries to put Marcus in the position of the bigot, right? You presented it like this, man. Oh, liberal, they're trying to push out those dumb black kids. Like, dude, Ruslan, you got to calm down with that stuff, man. That's not what he said. And I see the scam that you're trying to run on him. That's not right. That's not nice to put him in that position. Now, Ruslan, at this point in the interview, he starts to get more aggressive. He starts to get more, accusatory and stuff like that. And because he's talking to Marcus, it's essentially towards Marcus. And it's the typical thing. I mean, you talk to a woke church proponent long enough, and eventually they're going to call you a bigot. It's just that simple. Their brains are almost as broken as the pagans. I'll never forget one of the first guys that I ever talked to about this stuff. Someone I knew in real life. He knew I was Puerto Rican. He knew I was not white. Called me white privileged. You know what I mean? Like, eventually you will be called a bigot. You got to go into these conversations expecting that. And I think Marcus let it roll right off his back, probably because he's been called that a lot in these kinds of conversations. Don't get triggered by it. Expect it. Ruslan's got this squeaky clean, image and stuff like that. He's got this image for being an influencer, middle of the road kind of guy, but he's just as radical as all these guys. He is. So when you talk to someone like Ruslan, you're going to be called a bigot. Expect it and don't react the way they want you to react.
Things that take place within cultures that make it easier for certain people to get ahead. I don't think it has to do with race. For example, I mean, I could look at like LeVar Ball, right? Like, his kids, they work their butts off, but in a way, because of LeVar Ball, like, his kids were able to get in pro spots on major teams.
Yep.
Right.
And Marcus is about to say this, I think, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm trying to advantage my kid. Ruslan is trying to advantage his kid. Marcus, God willing, when he has kids one day, he will try to advantage his kids, and so on. You got to pass an inheritance on to your children's children. This is a good thing. This is how it's supposed to work.
It's fatherhood. Like Will Smith, his kids are popular and successful. Jay-Z and Beyonce's kid, Blue Ivy, just got an Emmy Award. She didn't have to, at 8 years old, she didn't have to jump through any hoops to get the Emmy Award that Jay-Z and Beyonce did. So I think, like, just having strong families and having strong parents that build, the Bible defines it as inheritance, right? So these sort of like generational wealth, like, that's biblical inheritance. And a lot of people see that as this awful thing. And, you claim to be free market capitalist guy, so I don't think you would, but a lot of that is just built on fatherhood. And I think a lot of the problems we see, a lot of the results of these institutions that really are making it difficult for individuals is not really, it doesn't have to do with like systems built on race so much as it has to do with the solutions harming the poor communities.
Right. So the fact of the matter is that here in the United States, the Native Americans were conquered. There's just no nice way to say it. They were conquered, no question about it. Europeans got here, and they brought over African slaves, right? And so in that scenario, the Native Americans no longer had their land. They no longer had their resources. That's just a fact. Not saying it's good or bad, but God wills as he wills. White people had a lot of resources. Europeans had a lot of resources, a lot of power, a lot of influence, and blacks had very little because they were brought over as slaves. So is it any surprise that if you look at who controls the majority of the wealth and of the majority of the institutions and stuff like that, it's going to look a certain way? Okay, fine. Let's just accept the facts as they are, right? Let's just accept the facts as they are. That doesn't mean that there's racist systems. What it means is that the past has an impact on the present. We can accept that. We can shake our fists at God. Why did you make me this way? Or we could just get to work, man. Mind your own business. See, this is the thing. This is why, I credit my father. I credit my grandfather so much because both of them were Christians. My grandfather came over to the United States when he was younger from Puerto Rico with nothing. He had nothing, but he was a Christian, so he worked his butt off. He decided to leave an inheritance to his children's children. He saved. He didn't, he wasn't frivolous with his money. He loved the Lord and he tried to obey the Lord. My father did the same thing. My father was in a better situation than my grandfather was. He did the same thing. He's built a legacy. My father, thank God, is still with me. So, he hasn't left me an inheritance yet, but I know that he's got resources and wealth that he, God willing, will pass down to his children one day and stuff like that. And I'm going to do the same thing. And so instead of shaking your fist and going, the systems, they're out to get me, my grandfather got to work. My father got to work. Okay, and you know why I'm in an advantaged position? It's because they didn't work. They weren't wringing their hands, doing nothing, and saying, the systems. No, they got to work. My goodness gracious, it's really not that hard. This is not a big mystery of how to do this.
Sometimes.
When I say it's not that hard, I don't mean it doesn't take work. Of course it takes work, but what I'm saying is the strategies aren't that hard. The strategies aren't that hard. The scripture tells us what to do, right? The scripture tells us what to do. Be faithful with what you have. If you have a little bit, be faithful with a little bit. God's not unreasonable. He's not expecting you to all become millionaires if you don't have any money at all, like overnight. He's not expecting that. He expects a return that's commensurate to what you've been given. If you've been given a lot, like I've been given a lot, there's just no question about it. I got a great family, and my family's. I was born into a Christian home. I mean, that's like winning the lottery, guys. If you've been born into a Christian home, it's like winning the lottery. But get to work. I mean, it's not complicated. It is hard. It's not complicated. It is hard though.
The state trying to be the daddy.
Sometimes, and there definitely are policies that do that. And there's also stuff like how the war on drugs played out, which didn't really play out the way it should have. And I'm sure you, as someone who
I'm not down with the war on drugs at all.
Yeah, so the war on drugs, those folks that don't know, there was and the CIA basically came out and said they were complicit in this. They didn't say the word conspire, but they were complicit in this. The illegal war that they wanted to fight to end communism in South America, they couldn't get Congress to pass it. And so the CIA allowed, whether they allowed or they were full on a part of the operation, cheap cocaine to flood Black and brown neighborhoods, specifically in Los Angeles, and get extremely cheap cocaine in areas that were already struggling financially, already high unemployment numbers, already all of these other policies, and to fund an illegal war. And that ravaged the Black community. And you're already coming off the back end of redlining. You're already coming off the back end of not being able to pass down property and generational wealth, as you spoke. So there was already those policies in the 60s, 50s and 60s. That's already preventing people. And then you get people who are already poor, struggling, and all of a sudden there's cheap cocaine everywhere. That's facilitated by our government.
Yeah,
and
sounds like the government's a problem.
Yeah, it sure does, Marcus. And Ruslan's about to agree here. Let's let Ruslan talk for a second.
Systemic racism. You just said it.
I just think
this is the stupidity of this whole perspective, right? There it is. Yeah, the government's the problem. Systemic racism. Now, but what we need to do is fund the government even more to get the schools to be like. So this is what you're telling me, that the government purposely destroyed black communities, and now we should trust the government to not do that. Right now, we should give them more money because they're benevolent now. Now they're going to give us the UBI. Now they're going to give us minimum wage. Now they're going to give the schools the right money, and they're going to teach the right things. Now they're going to help the blacks that they purposely destroyed before. This is what I'm saying by, like, guys, you can excuse a pagan for being this dumb, and I'm serious. This is dumb. You can excuse the pagan, all right, because they don't understand anything. They don't understand anything. So, of course, you could fool a pagan by saying, yeah, I know we destroyed you last time, but this time it'll be different. Why will it be different? It just will be. See, now we're benevolent now. When did you become benevolent? Well, we're just benevolent now. Trust us. Well, of course I'm going to trust you. I mean, you got the Federal Reserve. Of course I'm going to trust you. You could excuse the pagan, right? Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, they taught white supremacy, but now they're going to teach the right stuff. Now we can fund the government and we can trust them to take care of us. It's the same thing with the vaccine stuff. It's like they're trying to get the black community to take the vaccine, right? And so many people are just lining up to take it because now I guess the government is benevolent and they want the best for the black community. And I'm saying, look, if you're going to take the vaccine, that's totally fine with me. I'm not going to take it, but if you want to take it, that's fine. But don't let part of that decision be the fact that the government is paying black people to tell you that it's totally safe. Because if they didn't have your best interest in mind then, why would you believe that they have your best interest in mind now? I'm not saying you shouldn't get the vaccine, but that shouldn't be part of your reasoning. Well, I guess they just love black people now. That's insane. That's insane. You can excuse a pagan for being such a poor thinker that would be, he'd be like, see, systemic racism and CIA. And it's like, yep, that's right. Okay, fine. Let's just go with that for a second. The CIA is horrible. So why do you believe them now? I just don't get it. I just don't understand. Ruslan has no excuse, though. He can't be thinking in this way. This line of thinking is beneath a Christian. We've got actual biblical solutions that talk about all this stuff, and so it's just, yeah. I think I'll end there. So I'm tempted to keep going. Let's find out.
They just think it's government overreach.
Okay.
Anytime you have any individual.
So if we agree the government can be incompetent, why would we not think the government can do something that's not in the interest of all its people for the sake of the greater good? Because the ends justify the means. That's what happened in the 80s with the war on drugs.
I don't trust the government at all to do anything other than punish those who do evil.
Okay. Respect.
So, like, this is why I said at the beginning, like, assuming these.
Let's just stop right there. Oh, before I end, let me just say this amazing story. I was like so excited, but then I was like, I got sad right away. So we're regrading our backyard because we're on a bit of a hill, and so we're doing that in June. And so I allowed my kids to dig up dirt in the back and make like a little construction site and stuff like that. So we're digging up a hole, and the first day that we're doing this, my wife finds what appears to be a coin, and the markings on the coin I'm unfamiliar with, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, we just dug once and we've already found a gold coin. So I picked it up, and I knew it wasn't gold right away because it's too light, and I couldn't make out the markings, and I was just so excited. Like, what kind of coin could we have possibly found? It was like 2 inches under the ground, so I was like, man, this could be anything. This could be the lost treasure of Pizarro. I don't even know if there's a treasure of Pizarro, but anyway, so I washed it off, and trying to read the markings, and it is I believe a Publishers Clearinghouse scratch-off thing. So this is what you use to scratch off to see if you won. Why was it 2 inches under the dirt in my backyard? I have no idea, but there it is. I found a coin my very first day treasure hunting. So there it is. I hope you found this video helpful. God bless.